right, so today we're going deep on Julio Alberto,
Oh, yeah.
the Spanish football legend.
Yeah.
But, we're going to go way deeper than stats and trophies. We're going to get into, the man behind all that.
Yeah.
And lucky for us, we have this fantastic interview
Oh, yeah.
with Julio Alberto
This is a great interview.
on Josep Pedrerol's show El Cafetito.
El Cafetito. Yeah. It's known for being like kind of a laid back,
Yeah, it's casual, right?
kind of casual vibe. Yeah.
So it's perfect for like getting, kind of past
Mm-hmm.
the usual, athlete interview stuff.
Absolutely.
And what strikes me is like through this whole interview,
Mm-hmm.
you see this thread of resilience with Julio Alberto. Like he's been through a lot,
He has.
but always seems to come out,
yeah.
swinging.
Yeah. It's a great observation. And, starts early
Yeah,
with his childhood.
and a tough childhood.
His childhood was really difficult.
Yeah, parents split up.
Parents split up, boarding schools, orphanages.
Yeah,
It's like, wow. But he really,
yeah,
instead of letting it break him, it seems like it just
yeah.
really forged that, like, I'm going to make my own way kind of attitude.
Totally. And you see that even as a kid, he's resourceful. Like
Mm.
he tells this touching story
Oh, yeah.
about dreaming of having a dog named Tom and a fireplace.
Yeah.
It's like such basic stuff, right? But for a kid yearning for that stability,
Yeah.
it speaks volumes.
Absolutely. It's such a fascinating glimpse into what he valued,
Yeah.
even back then.
Yeah.
And it's even more poignant when you consider where he ends up,
Right.
later in life.
Yeah.
In a small village, surrounded by nature dogs, and yes, that fireplace.
Yeah.
It's almost poetic.
Yeah. Okay, but before we get to the tranquil present,
Yeah,
we got to talk about this kid
right?
from these circumstances ends up playing alongside Maradona.
I know, right?
It's a wild path to professional football.
Yeah,
He literally wrote to both Atlético Madrid and Real Madrid
he did.
asking for a tryout.
Can you imagine?
Bold
Talk
move.
about going for it.
Yeah,
And as luck would have it,
yeah.
Atlético responded first
Okay.
and invited him to their training grounds.
Oh, wow.
El Coruelo.
So you can imagine the pressure,
Oh, yeah.
young Julio Alberto walking onto that pitch knowing
Yeah.
this could change his life. And it did.
Yeah.
He nails the trial,
Yeah.
scores a contract for 200,000 pesetas
Wow.
back then. I mean, that was
It's
huge.
huge. Yeah.
It's hilarious, though. He tells this story
Oh, yeah.
about how his mom
Yeah.
thought he'd stolen the money. Couldn't believe it was real.
Classic.
And even better,
Yeah.
what does he do with his first big paycheck?
Tell me.
Buys his mom a new bed
Oh.
and fills the fridge with groceries.
Oh, my God.
You instantly get a sense of like
Yeah.
his priorities.
Yeah.
How grounded he remained despite the sudden success.
It's amazing.
Wait, he bought his mom a new bed?
He bought his mom a bed.
Okay, that's heartwarming.
I know.
But I gotta know,
Yeah.
what kind of kid pranks legendary coach Luis Aragonés in a sauna?
Yeah, the sauna incident.
You mentioned some mischievous stories earlier.
Oh, yeah. They'd had this really close bond. Aragonés was almost like a father figure
Yeah.
to Julio Alberto.
Okay.
But that didn't stop him and his teammate, Marcos Alonso,
Oh,
from
wait.
blocking the fearsome Aragonés inside the sauna.
No.
And then they cooled him down by chucking water through the window
Oh, my God.
or locking him in.
Those two were a right pair.
Oh, they were a handful.
Classic locker room antics.
Classic.
Gotta love it.
It definitely adds like a human touch,
Yeah.
to these larger-than-life figures.
Totally. But alongside the pranks,
Yeah.
Julio Alberto's talent was undeniable.
Oh, yeah.
His time at Atlético
Yeah.
was just the beginning.
It was,
Soon enough, he's off to FC Barcelona.
wow.
Can you imagine that feeling?
Stepping onto the Camp Nou pitch?
Yeah, playing for one of the biggest clubs in the world. Talk about a dream come true.
I know.
And this is where things get really interesting.
Yeah,
Because now he's sharing the field with Maradona.
exactly.
So,
Yeah, it wasn't all sunshine and roses, though.
Right.
They achieved incredible success,
sure.
multiple titles,
Yeah,
the electric atmosphere of Camp Nou, you name it.
of course. Yeah,
But there were also heartbreaks,
of course.
The final in Seville against Steaua Bucharest
Oof. Yeah, that one was tough.
must have been particularly devastating.
A real gut punch.
Yeah.
But it reminds us that even at the top,
Mhm.
things don't always go your way.
Yeah.
And for Julio Alberto,
Yeah.
that theme of navigating both the triumphs and the setbacks
Mhm.
is central to his story.
Absolutely.
But especially as he moves into those post-football years.
Which, as we know, weren't always smooth sailing, retiring at 32.
That's young.
So young.
Yeah.
You got to figure out life outside the structured world of professional football.
Right.
And he's very candid about the missteps he made.
Oh, yeah, he's open about it.
Remember that pig farm investment.
Oof, yeah, that one didn't quite pan out.
Not so much.
But it's commendable how open he is about it.
I know.
He even jokes about it.
He does.
You know, it almost becomes a cautionary tale
Yeah.
for other young players.
Yeah.
Focus on your health and well-being.
Yeah.
The business side can wait.
He learned that the hard way.
He did.
And speaking of hard lessons,
Yeah.
he doesn't shy away from discussing his high-profile marriage
Oh, right.
and subsequent divorce from Carmen.
Yeah.
It kind of gives you a glimpse
Right.
into the pressures of fame, the scrutiny that comes with being in the public eye.
You can sense the toll it took.
Yeah.
Being constantly under the microscope.
Yeah.
Especially while going through personal challenges.
Absolutely.
But perhaps the most impactful part of his story is his struggle with substance abuse and addiction.
This is...
He doesn't sugarcoat it.
No, he doesn't.
Really lays it bare.
This is where his vulnerability really shines through.
Yeah.
You know, he talks about hitting rock bottom.
Yeah.
The devastating consequences of addiction.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking.
It is.
But incredibly powerful to hear him talk about.
Right.
With such honesty.
And there's this poignant story he tells about this young police officer who he tried to help, who tragically lost his life to addiction.
Yes.
You know, and it's a stark reminder of the seriousness of this issue.
Absolutely.
And it underscores his message of like seeking help.
Yeah.
You know, never giving up hope.
Yeah. And it's this part of his story that leads us to the present day Julio Alberto.
Right.
Imagine after all of that,
he
chooses to live in a tiny village.
13 inhabitants.
With only 13 inhabitants.
It's such a stark contrast.
Complete 180.
To his past life.
Yeah, but you can sense a real peace in his voice.
Totally.
As he describes his life now.
Yeah.
He's found contentment.
Yeah.
In the simple things.
Yeah.
Nature, his dogs, and that sense of community.
It's almost like he's come full circle back to those childhood dreams of a simpler life. But he hasn't retreated from the world entirely.
No, he hasn't.
He's deeply involved with his foundation, Religiers.
And I think that's where we should pick up.
Okay, yeah.
In part 2.
Yes, review. We'll delve into that.
Yeah.
Incredible work he's doing next time.
Absolutely.
So stay tuned, folks.
Yeah.
We're just getting started.
It's going to be good.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
Me too.
All right.
Cool.
Yeah.
Welcome back. So last time we were exploring, you know, the highs and lows of Julio Alberto's incredible journey.
Absolutely.
From, you know, that tough childhood to the triumphs and tribulations.
Oh, yeah.
A football career that put him alongside legends.
I know. It's incredible.
Maradona?
Yeah. And just as we were about to get to the heart of what Julio Alberto's up to now, we had to take a break.
Yes.
But we're back ready to delve into his foundation, Relievers.
Okay, Relievers. So
it's a perfect example of how he's channeled his experiences into something profoundly positive.
So Reviver, meaning to revive or to live again.
Yeah.
The name itself is powerful.
It is powerful.
You know, it's focused on addiction prevention and education, particularly among young people.
Yes. And what's striking is you can just hear the passion in his voice when he talks about this.
Yeah, it's clearly not just a side project.
No, it's very personal.
For him.
He's drawing on his own struggles, but also bringing in experts.
Yeah.
Really trying to create like a robust support system for families grappling with addiction.
You get the sense that he's not just lending his name to the cause.
No, he's in the trenches.
He's in it.
With Reviver.
Yeah, he talks about traveling to Madrid for meetings, being hands-on with different initiatives, and even invites listeners to attend Reliever's upcoming Congress.
Wow.
He's saying, hey, this matters. Come join me.
Exactly. And that brings me back to something we discussed earlier.
Oh, yeah.
That importance of family that runs throughout his life.
Right.
Even though his foundation work isn't about family.
Yeah.
In the traditional sense, you know, it's about creating those support networks.
Right.
That so many people, especially those struggling with addiction, desperately need.
It's what he's taking that deep-seated value he has for family and extending it outwards.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've talked about the highs of his career, the lows of his post-football life, but let's get into some of Julio Alberto's thoughts.
Yeah.
Beyond the pitch.
Okay.
He doesn't shy away from tougher topics in this interview.
Right.
Including, you know, his faith and politics.
He's quite open about how his strong religious faith helped him through recovery and finding forgiveness.
It's a really moving moment when he emphasizes self-forgiveness as the first step towards healing.
Powerful stuff.
Yeah, it's powerful because it goes beyond just his personal experience.
Yeah.
It's a message that resonates with anyone who's struggled.
Right.
Regardless of their background. Totally. It's something we can all relate to, right?
Yeah.
That need to make peace with our past before we can truly move on. And then there's his perspective on politics, which I have to admit I was surprised by.
Really?
How nuanced it was.
Yeah, he doesn't fall neatly into any box.
No.
He advocates for respectful dialogue
Right.
and understanding differing viewpoints, which feels particularly relevant.
Especially these days.
These days, yes.
He even addresses Catalan independence.
Oh, wow.
Which is, as you know, a very sensitive issue in Spain.
It is.
He acknowledges that he understands the movement while personally believing in unity.
Interesting.
It's not just about agreeing or disagreeing. Right. It's about recognizing the complexity of the issue, listening to different perspectives.
It's refreshing to hear someone approach these topics.
Yeah.
With such thoughtfulness and openness.
Especially someone who's been in the spotlight.
Right.
Where it's easy to feel pressure. To take sides.
Okay, but we can't let Julio Alberto off the hook.
Right.
And now getting back to some good old-fashioned football talk.
Right. We're talking about a guy who played at Camp Nou.
I know.
With Maradona.
Come on.
He's got to have some juicy stories from his playing days.
He delivers. His description of walking onto the Camp Nou pitch for the first time is priceless.
What'd he say?
He compares the atmosphere to Star Wars.
Oh, wow.
You can practically hear the roar of the crowd through his words.
I bet it was mind-blowing, that energy.
Oh, yeah.
The sheer scale of it all.
Absolutely. And speaking of memorable moments, he shares some great insights into his relationship with Pep Guardiola.
Oh, wow. Okay.
They go way back.
Cool.
And even when Guardiola was coaching Real Madrid,
wow,
Julio Alberto still speaks highly of him.
There's a real sense of mutual respect there.
Yeah, which is cool to see, especially given the intense rivalries in football.
Yeah, and of course, no conversation about modern football is complete without mentioning
Lionel Messi.
And Julio Alberto doesn't hold back. Calling Messi the best player he's ever seen.
High praise coming from someone who shared the field with Maradona.
I know he even jokes that comparing anyone to Messi is almost unfair.
Right.
Like setting an impossible standard.
Yeah, but Messi's talent is undeniably extraordinary.
Oh, it's out of this world.
All right, so we've covered a lot.
We have.
Childhood dreams, the thrill of victory, the agony of defeat.
Yes.
Even pig farm misadventures.
Oh, yeah. Can't forget that.
But what I find so compelling about this deep dive into Julio Alberto is how he connects it all back to this idea of making a positive impact, particularly with Reviver.
His story really transcends just football.
Yeah.
It's about resilience, redemption.
And finding purpose in helping others.
It's a reminder that we all have the potential to turn our experiences, both good and bad, into something meaningful.
It's inspiring, right?
It is.
He could easily be enjoying a quiet retirement.
Oh, yeah.
But instead, he's chosen to dedicate himself to this cause.
And he does it with such humility and sincerity. It's hard not to be moved by it.
It makes you think about your own life, your own values.
Totally.
And how you choose to impact the world around you.
And that, I think, is a perfect segue into our final thoughts for our listener.
All right, so
as we wrap up this deep dive into the life of Julio Alberto.
Julio Alberto.
I want to leave you with a question.
Okay.
What aspect of Julio Alberto's story resonated most with you?
Is it the echoes of that tough childhood?
Yeah.
Like in how he approaches family and support now.
Right. Or maybe it was the sheer audacity of writing to both Madrid giants as a young player.
So bold.
Right.
I love that.
Or maybe it's his honesty about those post-football struggles.
Oh, yeah.
Things athletes rarely talk about.
Not at all.
We've all had setbacks.
Of course.
But Julio Alberto shows that you can turn them into fuel for something different.
Not about avoiding mistakes.
Yeah.
It's what you do with them that matters.
Exactly. And he didn't just talk the talk.
Right.
His work with Reviver shows real commitment to making a difference.
A reminder that even those at the top can face tough times. And it's okay to ask for help.
That vulnerability is actually what makes his message so powerful.
Yeah.
No pretense, just raw honesty.
So it makes you wonder, what's your Reviver?
Right.
What experiences can you draw on to help others?
Yeah, we're not all going to be football stars.
True.
But we can all find ways to leave a positive mark.
Absolutely. And if Julio Alberto's story sparked something in you, we've got a link to Reviver in the show notes.
So check them out.
It's amazing work.
It is amazing work. And who knows... Maybe you'll find your own way to get involved.
That's the beauty of these deep dives, isn't it?
It is.
This sparked curiosity, new ideas, maybe even action.
So until next time.
Yes.
Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.
See you next time. All right, let's kick off another deep dive. This time, we're heading over to sunny Spain, to the world of Real Betis Balompié.
Real Betis, huh?
Yeah, and we've got some great source material for this one, like a really interesting chat between a hardcore Betis fan and this renowned sculptor who, get this, has some serious ties to the club. And to make things even better, we've got some insider info straight from Betis' longtime kit man, Decades he's been with the club, can you imagine?
Wow, decades. That's incredible. Must have a ton of stories.
Oh, yeah. I mean, talk about behind-the-scenes insight. So, with all this, we really got to ask, what's the deal with Betis this season? They've got these amazing players, Isco, Canales, but something's just not clicking.
Yeah, they've got some real talent there.
Right. So is it even possible that having two brilliant playmakers is actually, like, working against them?
That's a good question. You'd think more talent's always a good thing.
You'd think, right? But maybe there's a tipping point where too much individual brilliance can actually mess up the team's balance.
Could be, like too many cooks in the kitchen, maybe?
Haha, maybe. But anyway, let's start with the cold, hard truth. Betis has only pulled off 2 wins out of 13 games.
Ouch, yeah, that's rough. Not what the fans were hoping for, I bet.
Not even close. And our guests definitely don't try to sugarcoat their disappointment. You could hear it in their voices. But here's the thing, though. Their love for Betis and their belief in Pellegrini, the manager, it shines through even when they're talking about these tough times.
That's real dedication right there, sticking with your team even when things are rough.
Absolutely. And, they kept bringing up that Celta Vigo game as like a mini version of their whole season, dominating the first half, then boom, total collapse in the second.
Oh, yeah, I remember that game. What happened there? Did Pellegrini make some bad calls, or did the players just kind of lose their focus?
Honestly, it's a bit of a mystery. I mean, some folks think Pellegrini's the right guy. He just needs more time and maybe more freedom to do his thing.
Yeah, maybe he's got his hands tied a bit.
Could be. But then you have others who think it's time for a change, like at the end of the season, get a fresh start.
Makes sense. It's tough to say without being in the thick of it.
Yeah. But the kit man's take was really interesting. He's been with the club for decades. He's seen it all. Wins, losses, everything.
Wow, that's a lot of football.
And he still thinks Pellegrini can turn things around. I mean, his perspective pretty valuable, don't you think?
For sure. I mean, he's not just some pundit watching from a distance. He's right there in the locker room. He can feel the pulse of the team.
Exactly. And speaking of the locker room, he shared some really eye-opening stuff about how, the whole culture of football has changed over the years.
Oh, really? Like how?
Like, he was saying how back in his day, it was all about, camaraderie. Players would eat together, hang out with each other's families, really build those bands.
Makes sense, yeah. Like a real team spirit kind of thing.
Right. And now it's so different. It's all headphones. Everyone's in their own world, probably on social media or whatever. It made me wonder if that affects their unity,
I see what you mean. If they're not connecting off the field, maybe that carries over onto the pitch.
Yeah, it's food for thought, for sure. But you know what else is interesting? Our sculptor guest, Damien, he had this really thought-provoking take on the evolution of the game. He actually said VAR has, killed the art of football.
Wow, killed the art. That's pretty strong.
I know, right? But it makes you think, doesn't it? Has technology, in trying to make the game fairer, actually taken away some of the magic? That spontaneity, that creativity,
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Like, sometimes those imperfections are what make things interesting.
Exactly. And our guests were pretty frustrated with VAR. They talked about inconsistent decisions, lack of transparency, and this feeling that referees are second-guessing themselves because they know VAR is there to bail them out. It's like they feel it's robbing the game of its human element,
Right, like that spark of brilliance that can't be programmed.
Yeah, exactly.
But before we get too deep into that, tell me about this story with Daniel's son and Cristiano Ronaldo. You mentioned it earlier.
Oh, yeah. So get this. His son was obsessed with Ronaldo, like any kid, right? But he actually asked his dad, this world-renowned sculptor, to make a bust of him.
No way. And he actually did it.
He did. It's amazing. And now that bust is owned by Real Madrid. Talk about a full circle moment.
Wow, that's incredible. It just shows how football can inspire people even outside the game itself.
Totally. And it reminded me that, behind all the tactics and controversies and everything, at its core, football is about human stories, dreams, dedication, and love for the game.
Couldn't agree more. And speaking of those human stories, let's talk about those fan clubs, the Piñas. I've always found those fascinating.
Oh, yeah, the Piñas, they're like these hardcore groups of fans who live and breathe Betis. Our kit man, Carita, actually had a piña named after him.
Whoa, seriously? That's pretty unusual, isn't it? I thought they were usually named after players or, famous figures.
Right. But that just goes to show how much he's loved by everyone at the club. Players, staff, fans, everyone. They even gave him a hard time for not showing up to the gatherings anymore.
That's hilarious. Sounds like a real tight-knit community.
It is. And speaking of Carita, did you know his nickname comes from his dad? His father was the chaplain for the Grand Poder, this super important religious figure in Seville.
Oh, I see. So that's where the Carita comes from, like a little priest.
Exactly. When he started working at Betis, people would be like, oh, here comes the priest's son. And the name just stuck.
That's funny how these things happen. But in a way, it kind of fits, He's like a guiding figure for the club.
Totally. He's seen it all those players coming and going, all the ups and downs of Betis history. And he had some really insightful observations about how the game's changed, both on and off the pitch. Like he talked about how players used to be much more connected, sharing meals, talking about their families, really getting to know each other.
Yeah, that's right. We were talking about that earlier.
And now it's all headphones and smartphones. Everyone's in their own bubble.
Yeah, it's a different world now. It makes you wonder, though, if that lack of connection off the pitch has any impact on how they play together.
It's a good question. I mean, it makes sense that if they're not bonding as much, maybe they don't have that same level of, I don't know, understanding on the field.
Definitely something to think about. It's not just the tactics and formations, it's the human element, too, right?
Absolutely. And, our guest had a lot to say about refereeing, especially with all the recent controversy surrounding the Madrid derby.
Oh, right. That was a messy one. VAR was all over the headlines again.
It was. Our guests were definitely not happy with how VAR is being used. They feel like it's making referees second-guess themselves, leading to all these overturned calls that were probably right in the first place.
I see their point. It's like VAR is taking away the referee's authority, making them doubt their own judgment.
And they were really frustrated with the lack of transparency. Like, why not release the audio of those conversations between the referee and the VAR officials? Let the fans understand the reasoning, even if they don't agree with the call.
Yeah, that would make things a lot clearer. I mean, fans deserve to know what's going on, especially with all the controversy surrounding VAR.
Exactly. It would build more trust in the system. And it brings us back to Damien's point about VAR killing the art of football. By trying to eliminate all doubt, all human error, are we sanitizing the game too much?
That's a great question. Are we losing that element of unpredictability, that raw emotion that makes football so captivating?
Right. I mean, we want fairness, of course, but we don't want to turn the game into something robotic and predictable.
Absolutely. It's a delicate balance. And speaking of unpredictability, let's shift gears for a moment and talk about the title race this season. Who do our guests think will come out on top?
Well, they seem pretty convinced that Barcelona is looking incredibly strong this season. They were really impressed with how Xavi, the manager, has transformed the team.
Yeah, I've been hearing good things about Barcelona. They seem to have found their groove again.
They have, and our guests were particularly impressed with Xavi's tactical approach and how he's managed to get the best out of players like Dembele and Frankie de Jong. Plus, they have these young stars like Pedri and Gavi who are making a real impact.
Yeah, those young guys are exciting to watch. They're the future of the sport.
Absolutely. But they also had some interesting thoughts about Real Madrid's struggles this season. They think even though signing Mbappe was a huge deal, it's actually kind of messed up their attack. Like they have too much talent and haven't figured out how to make it all work together.
Interesting. It goes to show that you can't just stack your team with stars and expect instant success. It's about finding the right chemistry, the right balance.
Exactly. It's a team sport at the end of the day. But getting back to Betis, one thing that really came through was the passion and loyalty of their fans. Even though the team is struggling, they're still there cheering them on.
It's inspiring to see that kind of unwavering support. It shows the real power of football, how it can bring people together and create such a strong sense of community.
And that's what makes places like the Benito Villamarín Betis Stadium so special. It's not just a place to watch a game, it's a symbol of their shared passion and history.
It's like a second home for them.
Exactly. And remember Damian, the sculptor. He dreams of singing the Betis anthem on the pitch, surrounded by those passionate fans. He says it would be like the ultimate expression of his love for the club.
That's a beautiful dream. It shows how deeply football can resonate with people.
And then there's Kurita, always the pragmatist. He just hopes the club can keep improving, competing for trophies and bringing joy to the fans. He's dedicated his life to Betis, and all he wants is to see them succeed.
It's that unwavering dedication, that belief in your team, that makes following football so rewarding.
It really does. And, as we've been going through this deep dive, I've been struck by the contrast between Damien's romantic vision and Kurita's more practical hopes.
I see what you mean. It's like they represent those two sides of the footballing coin, the dreamer and the realist, but both are important, wouldn't you say?
Totally. And as we head into the next part of our deep dive, I want to leave you with this thought. In a world that's obsessed with data, technology, and instant gratification, can football hold on to its soul? Can it still inspire dreams, bring communities together, and give us those raw, genuine emotions that make it so unique?
It's a big question, and one that we'll explore further as we continue our journey into the heart of Real Betis Balompié. Yeah, it really is amazing how this simple game can create such strong connections between people.
Yeah, it's true. And you know what else got me thinking? Kurita, the kit man, talking about how the game itself has changed, like on the field. He was saying that back in the day, players were almost like artists, improvising, taking risks, relying on their instincts.
That's a cool way to put it. Like, they had that freedom to express themselves.
Right. And now he feels like everything's so so structured and tactical, so analyzed, that players are almost like robots, just executing a plan.
I know what he means. It's become more like a game of chess, with managers as the ground masters.
Yeah. And in that process, has something been lost? Has that element of unpredictability, that flash of individual brilliance, been sacrificed for tactical discipline?
It's a tough question. I mean, we want the game to be fair and organized, but we don't want to lose that magic, right?
Exactly. And this all ties back into what Damien was saying about VAR killing the art of football. Are we over-regulating to the point where we're losing the essence of what makes it so beautiful?
Right, right. It's like we need to find that balance between fairness and preserving the spirit of the game. If we're not careful, football could become too sterile, too predictable.
Absolutely. And speaking of predictable, let's talk about the Isco and Canales situation. Remember, that's kind of the big question we're exploring here. Both of these guys are insanely talented, but for some reason, it's just not working on the pitch.
It's a real head scratcher. Two brilliant playmakers, but they can't seem to gel. Why is that?
Some people say their styles are just too similar that they clash. Others think it's more of a tactical thing, like Pellegrini hasn't figured out the right formation to make the most of their talents.
Yeah, could be either of those things, or maybe a bit of both.
Possibly, but, the Betis fan in our source material makes a really interesting point. He compares this situation to last year with Fekir and Isco. Remember Fekir? Another attacking midfielder, very creative.
Yeah, I remember him. Skilled player.
Right, and last season, whenever Fekir and Isco were on the pitch together, both of them seemed to underperform.
That's interesting. So maybe there is something about Isco's playing style that makes it hard for him to share the creative responsibilities?
It's definitely something to consider. Like, does Isco need to be the main man, the focal point, to really shine? Does his creativity get stifled when he has to share the spotlight?
Maybe. Or it could just be a matter of chemistry. Sometimes even the most talented players just don't click. Different personalities, different communication styles, who knows?
It's a complex issue for sure, and there might not be a single answer. But it shows how hard it is to manage a team with multiple stars. You can't just throw talent together and expect it to work like magic. It's about finding the right balance, the right synergy, the right tactics to help everyone flourish.
Yeah, it's about the team, not just the individuals. Individual brilliance is great, but it's that collective effort, that willingness to work together that ultimately makes a team successful.
You're so right. And one thing that really stood out to me in our source material was, the passion and loyalty of the Betis fans. They love their club, even when things are tough.
That's the mark of a true fan, isn't it? They're not fair weather fans. They're there through thick and thin. They understand that football is more than just wins and losses. It's about belonging, about being part of something bigger than yourself.
And that's what makes places like the Benito Villamarín so special. It's more than just a stadium. It's like a temple to their passion.
I love that, a temple to their passion. It really captures that feeling, that energy you get from those diehard fans.
Yeah, exactly. And Damien, our sculptor friend, he dreams of singing the Betis anthem on that pitch, surrounded by all those passionate fans. He says it would be like the ultimate expression of his love for the club.
Wow, that's beautiful. It just goes to show how deeply football can affect people. It's not just a game, it's a way of life for some.
It really is. And then you have Kurita, the kit man, always grounded and practical. He just hopes that Betis can keep improving. Competing for trophies, bringing joy to the fans. He's dedicated his whole life to the club, and all he wants is to see them succeed.
It's so heartwarming to hear that kind of dedication, that genuine love for the club. It reminds you what's really important in football beyond all the money and the fame and the drama.
It does. And as we've been going through this deep dive, I've been thinking about the contrast between Damien's dream, singing the anthem, and Kuria's hope, just wanting to see the club succeed.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Two different perspectives, but both rooted in that same deep love for Betis.
Exactly. It's like they represent the two sides of football, the romantic, the dreamer, and the pragmatic, the realist. And both are important, would you say?
Absolutely. You need both to make the game whole.
And as we head into the final part of our deep dive, I want to leave you with this thought. In a world that's obsessed with data, technology, and instant gratification, can football keep its soul? Can it still inspire dreams, bring communities together, and give us those raw, genuine emotions that make it so special?
That's a great question to ponder, and one that we'll explore further as we delve deeper into the world of Real Betis Balompié.
As we wrap up this deep dive into Betis, I keep thinking about something Damien said about VAR. Remember, he said it's taken away some of that magic, that improvisation.
Yeah, I remember that. It was a really interesting point.
He had this great analogy comparing footballers to flamenco dancers.
Oh, yeah.
He was saying, flamenco is all about spontaneous movement, rhythm, and that footballers used to have that same freedom. They could improvise and create something beautiful out of nothing.
Right, like it was instinctual.
And now with VAR, with every little thing being analyzed and replayed, it's like forcing those flamenco dancers to like choreograph every single step.
I get it. You lose that raw, instinctive energy that makes it so
It
captivating.
really makes you think, doesn't it? Are we losing something special by trying to make everything so perfect?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, we want fairness, but do we want to sacrifice the beauty and the passion that makes football, well, football?
Right. And it's not just VAR, it's like everything is getting so data-driven, so tactical.
True, true. There's this pressure to be efficient, to fit into a system.
And it makes me think about Kurita's stories about the old days, when players had more freedom. You know, they could express themselves without all the cameras and algorithms watching their every move.
Yeah, it was a different era.
Makes you wonder, has something been lost in all this progress?
Maybe. But I think there's still hope, like look at a player like Isco. He's got that old school artistry, that ability to create something out of nothing.
Yeah, he's a magician with the ball.
And even with all the changes in the game, he's still out there doing his thing. It's like he's reminding us that creativity and flair are still alive.
And there are others too, right? Like Neymar, Messi, Mbappe. They still have that spark, that unpredictability.
Exactly. And there are fans who love that kind of football, who get excited by those moments of brilliance.
As long as those fans are there and those players are out there, there's always going to be room for artistry in the game.
Couldn't agree more. At the end of the day, it's those moments that make us love football. Those moments of pure joy, of skill and creativity that go beyond tactics and statistics.
Yeah, it's that magic that makes it more than just a game.
It's funny, thinking about Damien and Carita, they represent those two sides of football, the dreamer and the pragmatist. But both, in their own way, they love the game deeply.
They do. And both are important. You need that balance.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I think it's safe to say that even with all the changes happening, the heart of football is still beating strong.
Yeah, and you know what? As long as there are people like Damien and Kurita, as long as there are fans who crave that beauty and players who create it, the future of football is in good hands.
I think you're right.
So to everyone listening, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Real Betis. Keep the faith, keep supporting your teams, and most importantly, keep that love for the beautiful game alive. Until next time, folks. All right, so we're going deep today, deep into Spanish football, specifically the drama at Sevilla FC.
Oh, yeah.
Whether you're, a diehard Sevillista sweating over these recent results or just fascinated by, like, what happens when a big club hits a rough patch.
Yeah.
We're breaking it all down.
Yeah.
We've got this heated discussion
Right.
from Sevilla Nia. It's this YouTube channel, really popular.
Popular.
And they get into it
Oh, yeah.
with Joaquin Caparrós,
Mm-hmm.
who,
Big name.
big name. He was the manager there, the sporting director.
Right.
So he
knows his stuff.
knows what's up.
Yes.
And he's with these analysts just dissecting, like, what is going wrong with Sevilla.
And they're really going at it. This isn't just like your, normal, polite football chat.
No.
They're digging deep, especially because, Sevilla's having a rough time in La Liga, like really struggling at home.
Yeah, I mean, no home wins since October. That's
Rough.
That's rough.
And the interesting thing is, like, the club president seems oddly happy with the team, with the transfers. But the fans, the analysts, they're, shall we say, less than thrilled.
Yeah, not exactly buying it.
No.
So the big question looming over all of this is,
Yeah.
can Sevilla turn this ship around?
Can they? And how?
And if so, how?
Yeah.
Well, one thing Caparrós kept hitting on was this lack of unity
Right.
within the club.
Yeah.
And he wasn't just talking about, like, players not messing on the pitch.
Right.
He was talking about a disconnect that starts at the top.
Yeah, the ownership.
The ownership.
The management,
But
the
these guys-
players.
Even, like, he
It's
compared
them-
it to, like, a family where everyone's singing a different tune.
Like, what is going on?
Could you imagine that household? Like,
Yeah.
what's going on at dinner?
Chaos.
It's just...
And that's exactly what it leads to. Confusion,
Yeah.
eroded confidence. I mean, think about it. The president's out there praising the squad, praising the transfers.
Right.
The sporting director seems to contradict him. Then you have the coach, Pimienta, suddenly exploding about the transfer strategy.
Right. After weeks of silence.
Weeks of silence. It's like no one is on the same page.
No.
And honestly, you see this in organizations all the time. Not just football. It doesn't matter if it's a business or whatever. Just imagine a company
Right.
where the CEO, the CFO, and the marketing head are all giving totally different messages about the direction.
Disaster.
A
Yeah.
disaster.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
lack of unity. Check.
Yeah.
But then
Fine.
Caparrós drops this this little hint, you know,
Yeah.
about Sevilla potentially
No.
facing financial difficulties.
Uh-oh.
It makes you wonder, is this why they're not making those,
The big
the
signings.
power signings, the ones the fans are
Yeah, the ones they want.
clamoring for, you
Yeah.
know?
It's definitely part of it, especially when you look at some of the recent transfers like Colo Arco.
Right.
It feels like they're just trying to plug holes.
Yeah.
Not really strategic,
Yeah.
not really like long-term investments, not those signings that makes you go, whoa, they're building something here.
Exactly.
And, this is where Caparros's insider experience is so valuable.
Right.
Because he's worked within the club.
Yeah.
He probably knows the financial reality
Stuff we don't know.
that we don't know. Yeah.
The stuff that's not public.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I think a lot of us, even outside of football can relate to that. Just that feeling of tight budgets,
Oh, for sure.
tough decisions.
Yeah.
You feel that pressure of, okay, do we go for the quick fix or try to build something sustainable,
Exactly.
even if it takes longer?
Yeah, and in football, that can really snowball.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you can't attract the top talent,
Right.
your performance suffers.
Get worse.
Which impacts your revenue,
Yeah.
which impacts your ability to spend.
And then
It's a vicious cycle.
and then you're
It's-
caught.
So what's the solution? Well, Caparras seems to be putting his faith in Sevilla's youth academy, the Cantera.
Ah, yes, the Cantera.
Cantera.
Sevilla has this incredible history of developing young talent and then, selling them, making bank.
Big part.
I mean, 3 World Cup winners
Yeah,
came out of their academy.
that's a system.
That's not just luck, that's a system.
That works.
But can they really rely on youth
Right.
to pull them out of this slump?
It's a big question.
It's a gamble.
It is a gamble. It is a gamble. On the one hand, developing your own players, cost effective,
Of course.
and it can lead to huge profits
Huge.
if they blossom and they get sold. But young players, they can be inconsistent. They don't have that top level experience.
Right.
And this is where the debate gets spicy.
Oh, yeah.
Because some people are saying the current crop of academy players, they're just not good enough.
Interesting.
But others are saying they're not being given a fair shot.
Okay.
Let them prove themselves.
So it's a question of, are clubs so focused on the now,
Mm-hmm.
the instant results,
Yeah.
that they're overlooking the long term?
The long game. Nurturing the young talent.
What do you think? What do you think?
That's a tough one.
Double down on the Cantera or splash the cash on some big names?
I don't know.
It's a tough call, especially when you consider how much pressure there is on clubs to perform right away.
Oh, yeah.
It's like everybody wants that instant gratification.
Instant results.
But building a successful team takes time, investment, and maybe a little bit of faith.
A little bit of faith. Yeah. And speaking of faith, we got to talk about this whole concept of mock pierda.
Okay?
You familiar with this?
I've heard it.
All right. So it's closely tied to Real Betis.
Oh, the rivals.
The rivals.
Fierce rivals.
Fierce rivals. It translates to even if we lose.
Wow.
Okay. So it speaks to this die-hard, almost defiant loyalty of the fans.
That's powerful.
It's powerful stuff. And it definitely adds fuel to the whole Sevilla-Betis rivalry.
Oh,
Montpellier, you can see it as this unwavering support.
right,
Crucial for any club.
right.
But it also raises this question of, can it be detrimental?
Uh-oh. Interesting.
Is there a point where this blind loyalty prevents a club from evolving,
Okay.
making changes?
Right.
The Sevilla panel, they were really going back and forth on this.
Yeah, I mean, are we talking helpful or harmful here?
All right.
Especially with where Sevilla is right now.
Yeah,
It's this tension, right?
it is.
Between that passionate support,
Yeah,
but also holding the club accountable.
absolutely.
Like, when do you say, hey, we love you, but you got to do better?
Yeah. It makes you think about that whole dynamic
Yeah.
between the club and the
Fan.
fans.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating.
Yeah. Welcome back to this this deep dive into all the turmoil
Yeah.
at Sevilla FC. So we've uncovered this lack of unity at the top, potentially made worse by financial issues.
Yeah, it's not looking good. It's not a pretty picture, but the Sevilla panel, they didn't just dwell on the problems. They tossed out some potential solutions.
They did.
And some of them pretty radical.
Yeah, like shake it all up,
Yeah.
new leadership.
Get rid of them. Yeah.
It came up when they were talking about the current president, Jose Maria Benito. And, fans, they're not convinced he's the right guy to get them back to the top.
Right.
And you could tell Caparrós was, he was trying to be diplomatic.
Yeah.
But he was kind of hinting that fresh leadership might be just the jolt they need
Like a wake-up call.
to break the stalemate.
Yeah. It's tough because you have what the fans want, instant results, big signings.
Right.
But then you have the reality of running a club. And sometimes
Nothing like that.
it doesn't line up. And speaking of reality, we got to address the elephant in the room.
The big one.
Relegation.
Yeah.
They're dangerously close. Dangerously close. And Caparrós, he didn't sugarcoat it. He was very clear. They need points.
And fast.
And fast. But he also cautioned against panicking.
Okay.
He emphasized that everyone, players, coach, management, got to stay focused, work together.
Pull themselves out of this.
Pull themselves out. Exactly.
So a sense of urgency.
Yeah.
But also this belief that they can escape.
Faith.
They can escape. But talent alone doesn't guarantee success, right? I mean, we've seen teams packed with stars just crumble under pressure.
For sure.
So what else needs to click
Right.
for Sevilla to turn it around?
Caparrós kept coming back to this idea of unity.
Okay.
Clarity. He used this phrase, stopgap solutions, to describe some of their recent transfers,
Okay.
meaning temporary fixes, not strategic signings.
Right, right.
So a unified vision. From the top down, that's crucial. Players need to believe in the coach's tactics.
Mm-hmm.
The coach needs the management's backing.
It's almost like back to basics.
Yeah.
Rediscovering that fighting spirit.
Yes.
You know, the Sevilla that people knew.
Exactly.
Those teams that defied the odds. They weren't always the most talented,
Right.
but they had that grit, that determination. It's contagious.
Think about those legendary Sevilla teams.
Yeah.
Watching above their weights.
Yeah.
They weren't always the best, but they never gave up.
Never.
That's the mentality Caparrós wants to see, reunited. He believes this current squad, even with its flaws, has that Sevilla DNA.
So there's a glimmer of hope
There is.
that they can tap into their history, find a way out.
They can.
But what about the fans?
The fans.
They're obviously passionate.
So passionate.
How can they channel that passion to actually help right now?
That's the question. Caparrós, he acknowledged how vital the fans' support is.
Yeah.
But he also appealed for patience, understanding. It's that balance, right?
It is.
Holding them accountable,
Right.
but also supporting them, especially when they're struggling.
And it brings us back to Montpellier. Imagine being a Sevilla fan right now.
I know.
That diehard loyalty.
Yeah.
But the club needs to evolve.
To change.
How do you reconcile that?
It's tough.
Can you be a passionate supporter
Right.
at a critical voice,
Pushing them.
pushing them to be better,
Yeah.
but still celebrating the victories?
It's a dilemma. Each fan has to figure that out for themselves.
Yeah.
But it makes you wonder, can Montpellier,
Right.
that unwavering spirit, evolve too?
To adapt to the challenges.
Yeah. It's a question worth thinking about.
All right, so we're back. We've been deep in it with Sevilla FC. Internal struggles, financial pressure, the weight of history,
Oh, yeah.
that Montpellier spirit.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. It's been a wild ride.
It really has. And, wrapping things up, the thing that keeps coming back to me is, can a club like Sevilla, so steeped in tradition, really embrace change?
It's like this weird paradox, right?
It is.
To survive, they might need to completely reinvent themselves.
Yeah.
But how do they do that and still be Sevilla?
Right.
The Sevilla analysts, they were hitting on this too, talking about a cultural shift,
Mm-hmm.
getting away from that short-term thinking,
Right.
moving towards something more sustainable long-term.
Yeah. And for Caparrós, it all comes back to the Cantera.
The academy.
New academy. He's like, that's it. That's the key. Nurturing those young players, creating a clear path to the first team.
It's the identity.
Yeah, rediscovering who they are.
But it's not like you just throw young players out there and hope for the best.
No.
It's got to be a strategic,
It's got to be.
real commitment to
Wow.
developing them and, maybe most importantly,
What's that?
patience.
Oh, patience. So much patience.
A lot of patience.
Yeah, and that's where that Montpellier comes back in.
Oh, there it is.
Because can the fans, so it used to demanding wins.
Right.
Can they embrace a longer view? It's a big ask, especially when you're fighting relegation.
Every point matters.
Every point matters.
It's life or death.
Yeah, but it's also an opportunity.
It is.
Because if the fans rally around these young players,
Mhm.
support their development even when the wins aren't coming right away,
Right.
they become a force for change.
Part of something special.
Yeah, building something special.
Imagine that Sevilla back on top, a European powerhouse
Yeah.
built on homegrown talent,
Wow.
fueled by those fans.
That's the dream.
It gives me chills.
It's not a pipe dream either.
It's not.
They have the history, the fans, the track record.
It's all there.
It's all there. They just need the right leadership
The right strategy.
to unlock that potential.
Exactly. And so a final thought for you, the listener.
Okay.
If you were in charge of Sevilla, what would you do? What needs to change? What needs to stay the same?
Big questions.
Big questions. It's a tough challenge,
It is.
but it's worth thinking about.
The future of Sevilla FC is up in the air. But one thing's for sure, this club, with its history, its fans, they'll never stop fighting.
Never.
They'll never stop striving for greatness.
Yeah, in their DNA.
And who knows, maybe the best is yet to come.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.